Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you my very first Haunting Hour short story versus episode video. And in this video, we're going to be looking at Catching Cold, the short story versus episode. Now, the short story, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was one of my favorite stories from this Darkness Creeping Volume 3 collection, and in the whole franchise as a whole. Super atmospheric, super creepy, and weird in a good way. In the episode, in the Haunting Hour TV show, I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really perfect. One of my all-time favorite kids horror episodes, and there's a lot to love about it, even though there's some things that I wish that were in it that were in the short story. Which brings me to this realization for a lot of you. A lot of you probably don't know this, but Neal Shusterman, he wrote 2 episodes for the Haunting Hour TV show, which were Catching Cold and Pool Shark. Pool Shark was an original story for the Haunting Hour TV show, but Catching Cold was actually taken from a short story put in Darkness Creeping, making this one of the handful of Haunting Hour episodes actually adapted from books. So take that for what you will, and if you didn't know that, now you do. And I have to say, Catching Cold, either way you go, is a fantastic story. It's so weird, it's so different. You're never going to see anything like it. It's definitely, at least in terms of which, in one particular version, it's an allegory on drug addiction, and in the other version, it's a story about trying to come out on top and be the hero when you haven't been the hero before. So there's almost 2 different versions of it. You might like one more, but that's why I do these, because I love to compare episodes that have, source material based in books. And Haunting Hour is a new venture for me to do this down. I've done quite a few Goosebumps ones, so I'm excited for this. Now, in my book versus episode videos, or my short story versus episode videos, I like to run down a few categories, and I'm going to go over them real quick. I always talk about characters, which version I think did the characters better. I like to go over atmosphere, which one had better atmosphere. Sometimes I go over aesthetics, and we will be going over aesthetics in this video because there are differences in terms of certain things about certain things in the story. So I will be going over those when I get to them. And then we go over which one had a better plot or plot structure, which one had a better climax, and which one had the better ending, okay? So let's get started because we have a lot to go over with this. So Catching Cold, there's not a lot of characters here, so it's kind of easy to run them down. The main character, Marty, right? Now, Marty in both versions here, he's a lazy kid, but I think it's played up more so in the episode. In the episode, Marty's more lazy. He's a little more dislikable, but it plays in terms of the story with its thematic differences that I'm going to go over in a minute. And I do think that Marty, by the end, he is empathizable to the point where he's not outright hateable or anything, but he's definitely a different feeling protagonist in this episode counterpart. As in the short story, the way he's written is a little bit weird because Shusterman's writing style in his short stories, especially in Darkness Creeping, is a bit weird. But in the short story, he's written more with an angle that he wants to be able to say that he stopped the ice cream truck. And that's the one thing that he wants to be remembered for. Everybody seems to want this ice cream, but he seems to want it the most, type of thing. So while there's similar elements in both versions with the character, if I had a preference on which Marty I liked more, for me, I think in terms of the angle of the character, I might slightly prefer the short story, but I'm actually going to tie them here because the way both versions deal with this character are so different, but they work in pretty much the same way, give or take a few things with the aesthetic differences. So yeah, I really enjoy them either way. So that's why I'm going to deadlock them here. Now, for the friend character, the main friend character, Ari, I think that's the name of the character in the episode. I can't remember his name in the book. I'm thinking it's the same person. Ari is pretty much a superfluous side character, but I do think in the episode, he is the way he's treated by Marty, I think is pretty much his character defining trait, and what he tries to do for Marty to help him makes him stand out a little bit better. As in the short story, he's just there for Marty to kind of bounce off ideas to maybe stop the ice cream truck. So in terms of which Ari I prefer, I think I'm going to prefer the episode Ari. The parents, particularly the dad and the mom, they're both kind of just in the story, but they have a lot more to do in the episode, especially the dad, I feel, even though he has a similar scene in the short story. So I would give a slight preference to the episode here for that. And I guess we have 3 more things to cover. There is a mailman that drops the hint about the ice cream truck legend with the kid Jimmy Jeffries early on in both versions here. The mailman character isn't creepy in the episode, but in the short story, he's actually played up to be a little bit creepy, so I'll give the edge to the mailman to the short story. In terms of Jimmy Jeffries himself, mild spoilers, there's an urban legend about a kid named Jimmy Jeffries years ago that Marty hears about that heard the creamy cold ice cream truck, and in both versions, Marty finds out the truth about what happened to Jimmy Jeffries in the end involving the ice cream truck. In both versions, I think they're played up almost identical, but the performance in the episode, I forget the guy's name. It's like something Ernst. I forget his name, but I think that's his last name. He did a fantastic job playing Jimmy Jeffries. So if I had any preference, I'm going to give it to the episode. Super good. And then we have the creamy cold ice cream truck, right? So here's the thing about the ice cream truck. The ice cream truck, mild spoiler, is the main villain of the story. Or if you want to call it, the ice cream itself is the villain. They both kind of serve the same purpose here. In both versions, this villain is kind of trying to find a soul to collect so he can keep, existing. But I think in the short story, the creamy cold ice cream truck isn't played up as creepy as the episode is. As in the episode, he's more of like a mythological being that you have to believe in or really want for it to exist. So that added element in there, getting ahead of myself on aesthetics, I'd have to give it to the episode for the creamy cold ice cream truck. I just think it's handled a little bit better there. So that's about it for characters. Atmosphere. Now, you're going to be shocked about this, but if I had a preference on atmosphere, here's the thing about the episode. The episode, it feels dreary and rainy, I guess because of the time of year it was filmed in, and I guess for the setting location, it looks like every other neighborhood set story in the Haunting Hour TV show, which is fine. But I have to give the edge to the short story here, because one thing that's missing in the episode that was in the short story is a summertime 4th of July atmosphere going for it. And there's fireworks involved, the holiday itself, you get that summertime vibe. You just don't feel it in the episode, but the episode being dreary does kind of add to the morbidness of it, ironically. But if I had a preference, I think the short story is a little more atmospheric. And I think because of budgetary reasons, they weren't able to really pull that off here in the episode, but I think the atmosphere easily goes to the short story. Now, in terms of aesthetics, there's a lot to go over, but the first thing is the addiction element. Now, in the short story, Marty isn't played up to have an addiction. More so, he's obsessed with trying to stop the ice cream truck because all the kids can hear it and nobody's ever been able to stop it. And it's played on, the lesson is more played on, be careful what you wish for. Marty wants to be that kid to stop the ice cream truck. He gets so obsessed and wrapped up in trying to, I guess, defeat the ice cream truck from not stopping for kids that he doesn't really pay attention to the legend and think about what happened to Jimmy Jeffries. And once he finally gets to stop the ice cream truck, that's when he finally gets to eat the ice cream for the first time and decide that he wants more and hops in the truck and then realizes the truth. As in the episode, it's played up in a whole different way, right? The addiction stuff happens early on. Marty, he hears the ice cream truck. He tries to stop it, but it doesn't work. But then the truck visits him later and gives him ice cream to sample, essentially. And he becomes obsessed with it. And that's the driving force of pretty much the rest of the episode. And how he's acting and how he's behaving is like a drug addict. And I think that's a way better angle than the short story. So if I had a preference on how Marty is, laid out in the story in terms of, is he trying to be the hero to stop the ice cream truck because he wants it the most, or is he being selected by a mythical being to be given the ice cream of the gods so he can become addicted to it? I think I prefer the episode in that regard. Another aesthetic change that some people might not pick up on is the fact of there's an element in the short story that I think is more prominent, and that aesthetic is everybody can hear the ice cream truck, and the mythological aspect of the ice cream truck in the episode is not a thing. In the short story, everybody can hear the ice cream truck, everybody knows what it is, but nobody's able to stop it. As in the episode, Marty seems to be the only one hearing it, right? So I don't know what makes it creepier. I think in the short story, it is played up really neatly. I like the idea that everybody knows it and everybody wants to stop it, and Marty has to be the hero. But if we're looking at it from like which one is scarier, Marty being chosen by the ice cream truck seems a little more personal, and it kind of plays into his weaknesses of his personality a little bit better. So in terms of that, I'm going to give it to the episode as well. So those are pretty much the two main aesthetics about the story that are different. And yeah, so if I had a preference overall, it goes to the episode. Now, in terms of plot, right? So they both generally have the same plot. It involves Marty going throughout the story trying to stop the Creamy Cold truck. But in the episode, it's a little bit different from the short story. In the short story, Marty, he hears the ice cream truck one day. It kind of starts off, and you get a little backstory about how Marty's always tried to stop this truck as well as other kids in the neighborhood, but they can't seem to stop this Creamy Cold ice cream truck ever. And it's fabled, because they hear it from a mailman, that maybe one kid named Jimmy Jeffries actually was able to stop it, but nobody's seen him in a very long time. Nobody knows what happened to him. He was obsessed with trying to stop it, and then he just up and disappeared. So Marty takes it upon himself, kind of following in the footsteps of the legend, to plan schemes. And it culminates on 4th of July, where he knows everybody's going to be watching fireworks nearby, and the whole neighborhood's going to be isolated. He's banking that the ice cream truck is going to come like clockwork, and he's going to have the streets to himself, and he's going to lay out this pretty much Kevin McAllister-like plan to stop the ice cream truck once and for all, and he's going to be able to finally get the ice cream. As in the episode, it's played up a whole different way in terms of plot. Marty hears the ice cream truck. He gets some money. He tries to stop it. He sees that it says Creamy Cold. He starts to kind of hyper obsess about it. He's talking with people that don't seem to understand where he's coming from, because they never heard the ice cream jingle. And it starts to get to Marty a little bit. And then once he's given really early on the ice cream from the truck that seems to be like trying to get him addicted to it, he starts to develop obsessive and addictive behavior around his peers and his family, and he started to look more disheveled. He can't get the idea out of his mind. He even draws a picture of ice cream on a piece of paper and licks it. I forgot to mention that in my review, but that was really weird. He's drawing in his math book Creamy Cold logos. Whenever he's sleeping, he hears the Pop Goes the Weasel jingle that is also in the short story, I should say, in like faucets and stuff. Like, it can't escape his mind, essentially. And he's going after the truck because of his addiction, right? But nonetheless, both plots are pretty different. If I had a preference on one, like I said, because of the aesthetic changes, I definitely think it elevates the story in the episode to a thematic story, as in the short story is just played up like a slice of life type of thing. But I will say both are really good. In terms of plotting, the short story has a fantastic plot, but I just think with that extra edge, I have to give it to the episode. Episode has a better plot, wholesale. Now, in terms of the climax, now this is going to be interesting. The climax is more so the same, except mildly different. I've already touched on the fact that 4th of July plays a huge factor in the short story, and how Marty stops it involves his first time actually eating the ice cream as well. So Marty gets his first taste, and that's what prompts him to go into the ending about entering the ice cream truck. As in the episode, I would hardly consider this a climax, but he ends up finding a spike strip in both versions from his father, who's a cop, in the back of his cop car, and he decides to bring it with him to stop the vehicle. But in the episode, he has like a weird plan to go outside and ride his bike, and he's gonna camp out with a backpack and try to throw the spike strip down. As in the short story, there's a lot more planning and effort that you get to see involving that. So in terms of like climax, which I think is the point where Marty stops the truck overall, I think I prefer the climax in the short story counterpart slightly more, just because of that added planning and payoff that we get to see in the short story. In the episode, it just feels like he comes to that out of desperation type of thing, which isn't bad, but I just think the short story has a little more there. Now, in terms of the endings are basically the same thing. I'm gonna kind of give it away here, but essentially, Marty he enters the truck to get more ice cream, and he may or may not meet a character named Jimmy Jeffries inside of the ice cream truck. And Jimmy Jeffries reveals the bombshell that the truck needs a soul, and Marty's now going to be the soul that powers the truck. And until another kid can catch it, he's going to be stuck in there. And Jimmy Jeffries, he's still wearing the same clothes he disappeared in, but he's way older, to give you an idea. So, yeah, both have the same ending here. However, in the short story, you don't have the added benefit of the actor who plays Jimmy Jeffries here. And in my opinion, I think with the whole addiction element, having that ice cream kind of there for Marty just to willingly climb in the episode makes more sense, even more than in the short story where he's like given ice cream at the climax and then he goes inside and wants more. I feel like the desperation to climb inside the vehicle makes more sense in the episode compared to the short story, given that, you know, after he first tasted it, he immediately goes back in there for more. But both kind of work, and honestly, I'd probably give the endings a tie, but if I had a slight preference, it would go to the episode for Jimmy Jeffries' actor, essentially. So all in all, Catching Cold, which one do I think is superior? Do I think the short story or the episode is superior? Now, here's the thing. In terms of points, short stories, a 0.5 isn't that big of a difference because I only give 0.5 increments for short stories, or 0.25 sometimes. As in the episodes, I give more precise scores, so sometimes you can see a lot more correlation. I think the short story is very serviceable. I think while I prefer Marty in the episode, I think, you know, there's still some serviceable things. You know, Ari's a little bit better in the episode as well. The parents are kind of even. Jimmy Jeffries has a really good actor kind of helping it, but Jimmy Jeffries is good either way. The mailman, he's played more creepy in the book. The atmosphere is definitely better in the book. I do like the climax a bit better. The short story, or, you know, inside of this collection here, has some good strengths over the episode, I should say. But the end product, I think, is just more iconic and memorable in the episode. And I'm not speaking on that because I experienced the episode first or because the episode is labeled a Haunting Hour thing. I just think the Haunting Hour story made it more than what the short story brought. You know, there's a whole thematic element that in the episode that kind of elevates it. And while it doesn't have all the best qualities that the short story has, where it counts, it executes it way better. So if I had a preference, I'm going to say Catching Cold, the episode is better. And it's literally probably by a sliver of a hair. I will say this, as a knock to the episode potentially, even though I didn't deduct anything on it in my review, I wish the 4th of July summer atmosphere was in the episode. That's something that I think the budget really copped out on. And maybe some added elements or maybe some tweaks to the climax to make it more Kevin McAllister-esque. That could have been played up a little more in the episode too, thinking about it. But I do think both are great nonetheless. But I just prefer the episode personally. Some people might disagree, some people might agree, but that's just how I feel. But because The Haunting Hour is mainly a straight to episode franchise, and what I mean by that is they're writing stories for episodes. They're not really adapting all that much. They don't really have that book basis. I mean, they do because The Haunting Hour is based on The Haunting Hour and Nightmare Hour duology. So not a lot of people think to go read the short story and then go watch the episode. But in this case, because this is one of the select few that have that option, I will say, go read the short story and then go watch the episode. You're probably going to see things that you like better. You could probably watch the episode and then go read the short story if I had to recommend as well. It's either way you can go with this one. However you do it, as long as you experience both, I think you're going to enjoy certain things about each one for their own particular reasons. And you might like certain things more than the other, and that's totally fine. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Catching Cold, the short story versus episode. Let me know down in the comments section, which one do you prefer? Do you prefer the short story or the episode? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.